Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. I work in the offshore oil and gas industry, Oilfield for short, and the work that my crew and I do often has us working with our equipment set up on board ships called offshore supply vessels, boats owned by another company. I live and work in Asia. We normally have a crew of 15 to 20 people on site at any given time, and we don't have specific shifts like day or night. We just work whenever the requirement arises or the client requests, day or night. In most cases, this means we'll be working 24 to 36 hours straight. This one time, the client engaged our company to charter a supply boat and set up our equipment on board to do a job at an offshore drilling rig. Our equipment is huge, 800 horsepower, 20 by 8 feet large diesel-driven units each, and pretty much occupied the whole deck of the boat. Things started up normally. We set up the equipment, which took a week's hard work, sailed out of port, and got to the drilling rig on schedule. There was some other operational stuff going on, so we waited on standby near the rig for a couple of weeks, floating about and killing time. This is where the fun starts. I mentioned earlier that we had about 15 guys on my crew, plus another 20 who made up the boat's crew. The boat isn't that huge, so there's always another human being probably within shouting distance. It started the night we got on location. At breakfast, a couple of my guys were sitting around, zombified and exhausted. They said they had a bad bout of sleep paralysis. Now, this can happen occasionally, especially as a result of really hard physical exertion for prolonged periods. The moment you collapse and have a good deep rest, your body can experience what seems to be sleep paralysis. No biggie, since we'd spent a whole week, day and night, rigging up heavy equipment and piping. We shrugged it off and went back to sitting around shooting the breeze. After all, we had a couple of weeks of nothing to do on standby. With plenty of rest, it wouldn't happen again. We were wrong. The next night, a few other guys got it. Then the following night, a few more. Every single night, random guys experienced it. There was no pattern. No exception. Eventually, everyone had experienced it. Some reported being able to open their eyes and seeing a dark figure pressing down on them in their bunk beds. A couple of the more religious ones tried reciting prayers during the episodes, only to have the choking, pressing feeling intensify. Morale was taking a beating. In isolated cases, we could laugh it off since there was a reasonable explanation and correlation to the physical work we did. This time, something was very wrong. The whole crew was getting it, and we literally had zero physical work at all. Still, we gave each other what moral support we could to get through the days and nights. In the mornings, we knew. The tired, drawn expressions, the sunken eyes, the dark circles. We knew who it had come for the previous night. That's not all. If you've worked offshore, you'll know that sometimes standby time is the hardest because you quickly run out of ideas to pass the time. So we got busy, found things to do, started running through the preventative maintenance and startup checks on our equipment, and ran the units so the moment we got the green light from the client, we would be ready to go at full throttle. It came at us there too. Strange sounds on deck, amongst the equipment. I was on deck one evening after dinner with 5 other guys working on one of the diesel engines. Suddenly, a huge metallic boom rang out from the aft deck. It sounded like someone took a 10-pound sledgehammer and slammed it into one of the metal bulkheads. I got up to check it out, thinking it might have been a loose lube oil drum or one of the units not being shimmed properly. The supervisor grabbed my arm and said, "Not now. Tomorrow. In daylight." I was about to protest, but seeing the look in his eyes, I backed down. In the morning, the other guys and I went to check the aft deck. Nothing. Equipment skids were shim tight. Everything secured tight as it should be. And the previous night, there was no one at the aft deck area. But every night from then on, the same boom. The same place. without fail. Another thing, the vessel's crew flat out refused to say anything when we asked about these things. They were friendly and great guys to work with, but when this topic came up, they simply clammed up. And weirdly enough, they also absolutely refused to ever come out on deck after nightfall. Daytime was fine. They would help with any requests at all. After dark? Nope. Want a spare part from the deck store during the day? Fill out forms and wait outside while the bosun goes and gets it for you. Nobody goes inside my store. After dark? It's a free-for-all. The deck crew, not even a fussy bosun, would come out on deck. Go ahead and take what you need yourselves. Just fill in the logbook. The final straw came once it was time to finally get to work. For context, we had an electrician, a white American named Jack. Awesome guy. Chill as hell. Skeptical when it comes to weird happenings. He was the one guy on the crew who could laugh off everything that happened and said we were imagining things. So in a way, he helped us keep our sanity. The job starts. The big diesel units are running at full throttle. Everyone is giving it their all, and we're all done in about 24 hours straight. The client is happy. Time to sail home. The crew shuts down the equipment, pats each other on the back, and heads to the locker room. It's about 2 a.m. at this point. Wait, where's Jack? Jack was curled up in a ball in the locker room, in a tiny gap between the lockers and the wall. A mound of cigarette butts lay on the floor at his feet. He was rocking back and forth, chain-smoking furiously. He doesn't chain-smoke. Pale, shaking, eyes wild, and muttering over and over again. WTF, man. WTF did I just see? WTF was that thing? We heard what happened from our mechanic. He was with Jack on the aft deck near the railing when they both saw a white, man-sized bundle fall from the drilling rig and into the sea with a loud, audible splash. It's a 30-meter drop from the rig floor to the sea level. Hang on. These guys were standing right behind the diesel engines, 140 decibels loud, with earmuffs on, and they heard a splash? Jack got really excited, thinking it might be a man overboard. He wanted to throw a life ring and jump in to save him. But the mechanic grabbed him, pulled him back from where he was about to climb over the railing, and dragged him backward. Jack started to argue, until they saw something. It was moving in the water. For context, it's dark, midnight. We're out in the open sea. The sea is choppy. If anyone fell into the sea in these conditions, good luck to you. This thing they saw, it was submerged and coming toward the boat, making a V-wave as it approached. Jack continued arguing, as if in a trance, insisting it was a man overboard and that he needed to rescue the person. He started climbing the rail again. The mechanic slapped him and said, "Jack, whatever that is, it's not human. We're going. Now." Next thing we knew, we found Jack huddled in the locker room, out of his damned mind. Couldn't even muster a coherent sentence. Took him a couple of days to regain his composure after that incident. Thankfully, the journey back to port was short, 20 hours sailing time. We were all too motivated to disassemble the equipment as soon as we reached the shore and get the hell off that boat in record time. It was one of the scariest and weirdest experiences I've had in my whole career. My favorite things to do have always been swimming and exploring, so it's no wonder that I became obsessed with scuba diving and caving. I was 12 when my dad started taking me to do these things, but I didn't go into my first underwater cave until I was 18. After that, I went to as many as I could as often as I could go. I had no problem exploring the same one over and over. There are some close to where I grew up, and I know them as well as my own home. I'm 36 now, and in all those years, I've never had any close calls or seen anything unusual until my trip to Hawaii. You can see many of their underwater caves on Google, but you won't find the one that I'm talking about. And I'd rather not say exactly where it is, so don't ask. I don't want to be responsible for someone else going down there when I barely made it out. A few days into my trip, I met some locals who told me about a spot that I wouldn't find on the maps. They were planning to go that weekend and were kind enough to invite me to go along. Unfortunately, I was too excited to wait. They warned me not to go alone, but I knew I could find it based on their description. I only intended to explore the entrance. I was never planning to take any risks. I even left most of my equipment behind so I wouldn't be tempted. But this cave was unlike anything I'd ever seen. It's not uncommon to find air pockets in these types of places. But that's usually what they are. Pockets. Smaller spaces where the water doesn't reach the cave's roof. If you're lucky, there will be a ledge or somewhere to rest without having to use your oxygen supply. But, barring a few exceptions, that's about it. This cave was the mother of all exceptions. I swam to the other end and found what I thought would be a good resting ledge. But it wasn't. Once I got out of the water, I saw the ledge actually went further than my flashlight could reach. I kept walking, thinking each step would suddenly reveal the end, but it never came. I don't know how long it actually took, but I walked much further than intended. When I finally reached the other side, there was no wall, just more water. I immediately wanted to jump in and keep exploring, but I suddenly got a horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. The feeling that something terrible was about to happen. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. The coldest chills of my life spread through my body. I've had friends get creeped out like that sometimes. It just never happened to me. But whatever this was, I could feel it in my bones. I carefully surveyed my surroundings while trying to calm down. That's when I noticed another ledge across the water. After a short debate with my better judgment, I decided it was safe enough to swim across and continue exploring the other side. That's when I heard footsteps. My stomach traded places with my heart. It sounded like something very large was dragging its feet and getting closer. But when I shined my light in that direction, the sound stopped. That's when the real fear hit me. If something else was down there, trying to sneak up on me, they only had bad intentions. Knowing I had to leave quickly, I kept my light trained on the opposite ledge in hopes of gaining a little extra distance as I backed away, and a huge pair of red eyes appeared. They were only visible for a brief second before fading back into the darkness, but they definitely weren't human. Even if they hadn't been red and glowing, no one has eyes that big or that far apart. Whatever they belonged to was massive, and I didn't want to meet it. Eventually, my light fell short of the opposite ledge, and a loud splash came immediately after. That thing had jumped into the water to continue its pursuit, and I panicked. I turned and began running as a deafening roar erupted behind me. It made no other sound as it swam across, but it arrived at the other side faster than any human could have. Next, I heard its claws tearing into the rock wall as it climbed onto the ledge, and I fully believed I was going to die there. As the sound of its pursuing footsteps grew closer with each second, I was tempted to turn and face the beast before it killed me. If I was gonna die, I deserved to know what my killer looked like, but I was too afraid. Another low growl echoed through the cave. Tears filled my vision. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I saw the end just ahead, and somehow, I'd made it. I barely had enough self-control to enter the water properly, but I'd been through too much to let stupid mistakes kill me now. I swam like a madman, fully expecting a large splash to follow right behind me. But it never came. After a short distance, I stopped with the realization that I would spend the rest of my life wondering if what I experienced was real or some kind of break from reality. So I resurfaced once more, without the flashlight. Everything was pitch black. The kind of dark where you can't see your hand in front of your face. All except for two glowing red orbs in the distance. I couldn't make out anything else, not even the shape of the owner's head. They were completely still until they suddenly rose several feet higher, like how a snake will stand straight up. It's hard to guess the height even at that angle, but at the very least, it was much taller than a human. Needless to say, it was a while before I went into another cave, and it certainly wasn't that one. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.